Welcome to the Sabbath afternoon Mustard Seed Advent Seminar. Today, January 21st, 2023, is our sixth study of Series 48, a colloquium on doctrinal inversion analysis. My last, on December 10th, 2022, requires much more discussion. Ergo, we convene part 2 to expose even deeper insight about 666 and the mark of the beast. I, Derek West, welcome you today from our headquarters in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. It is the place where David's end-time son, the man whom David futuristically called my Lord, was promised to rule after being seated in patience. To quote directly, it says, quote, "The Lord said unto my Lord, sit thou at my right hand until I make thine enemies thy footstool. The Lord shall send the rod of thy strength out of Zion, rule thou in the midst of thine enemies." Psalms chapter 110, verses 1 and 2. Speaking of this same ministry, Christ further elaborated when he said, quote, "For as the lightning cometh out of the east and shineth even unto the west, so shall also the coming of the Son of Man be." Matthew chapter 24, verse 27. In this work, he, Christ, by use of electricity or lightning, is making reference to the medium of my electronic broadcast, my lightning. This work is the lighting down of Christ's arm as promised in Isaiah, and as he foretold that, and I quote, "The Lord shall cause his glorious voice to be heard, and shall show the lighting down of his arm. For through the voice of the Lord shall the Assyrian be beaten down, which smote with a rod." Isaiah chapter 30, verses 30 and 31. The Assyrian, symbolic speech defined, as we continue, is to be beaten down by this spiritual outpost, the lighting down of the Lord's arm. Before further elaboration, I must say that it has been 6 weeks since our last study, and God has graced us with more evidence to show the signs of the time. For example, many of you may be aware that on Monday Night Football, January 3rd, 2023, a spectacular event occurred that adds coincidental drama to aid in the defeat of the mark of the beast. That was the time when football player for the Buffalo Bills, Damar Hamlin, collapsed in death. After nearly 3 days of critical care and artificial resuscitation, he awoke. How does this heroic episode of Damar add ammo to defeat the mark of the beast? Before answering, all should know that whenever the attention of the world is so seized, one can be guaranteed that God is using that electronically conveyed drama to give a message to humanity. It is merely a matter of having a man on earth, also known as David's promised Lord, the son of David, to search out Father's divine purpose. Damar's glorious moral is tributary to our study in a startling way that I will explain downstream. Preliminarily, the image of the beast of Revelation chapter 13 as our keystone mission for this hour must be meticulously summarized that we in this study may discern this hour of our peace. But before we delve more into that topic and its significance for this hour, I must summarize that we in this study may discern the hour of our peace. Notice the graphic. The woman has her meaning, which for now we shall bypass. For the purpose of our tight focus, I urge you to behold the two horned beasts, also known as the lamb-like beast. He has an unholy desire to secure world dominion. His design is modeled after the dominion of medieval Catholicism, which is portrayed as the ten-horned beast. It is worthy of your careful attention. The beast to your far left represents the pagan Rome. Emperor Constantine was its last champion. Much of these images are depictions of symbols defined in Revelation chapter 13. The lamb-like beast's zeal is to dominate religious freedom today. This finding requires that we itemize the 5 personalities of this highly symbolic prophecy of Revelation chapter 13. The first personality for our focus in this study is the 10-horned beast, which we said represented Catholicism. The second is the 2-horned beast. The third is not portrayed on the screen, but is the scriptures manifest that it is the image that the 2-horned beast seeks to install to reincarnate the 10-horned beast or medieval Catholic dominion. There are 2 more of the 5 expressed personalities from Revelation chapter 13. Before counting them, I must remind you that the 2 horns represent the polarized parties who govern America. Their institution is evident throughout every echelon of her government historically, that is local, state, and federal. Also, it pervades her legislative, judicial, and executive branches of politics. Either one governs as a liberator under the icon of Abraham Lincoln, or they seek to rule under his arch nemesis, the men of the Southern celebrated iconic statues of the Confederacy, men such as Jefferson Davis and Robert E. Lee. These Confederate celebrities of affliction were men who, bottom line, advocated for the rape and pedophiliatric abuse of America's former slaves. E.G. White said there is no viler sin than the sin of slavery in human history. To quote her directly regarding the Civil War, she said, Satan was the first great leader in rebellion. God is punishing the North that they have so long suffered the accursed sin of slavery to exist. For in the sight of heaven, it is a sin of the darkest dye. God is not with the South, and he will punish them dreadfully in the end. Ellen G. White, Testimonies for the Church, Volume 1, page 359. The struggle can be classed as the Anglos versus the Saxons, also known as the blue versus the gray, the Union loyalists versus the Confederate flag wavers. These 2 political forces combined control the 2-horned beast. As a Christian, ergo lamb-like, they are grouped together to designate the third of the 5 personalities revealed in Revelation 13. There are 2 more to be listed. The 4th personality is 666. He is a singular man. Describing this man, it says, and I quote, "Let him that hath understanding count the number of the beast. For it is the number of a man, and his number is 666. Revelation chapter 13, verse 18. Counting skill is here required to discern his personage. The number of the man is called the number of the beast because he is a singular individual who gains leadership of one of the 2 horns of the beast. He is the ordained king of the Confederate flag waving party, a master of the child molesters. You do know that they sexually abused their slaves, and by the worship of their historic statues and the clasping of their flag, their political progeny today consigns to themselves the same perverse tarnish. Such corruption has been easily manifested by his separation and ill treatment of the children of recent immigration whose parents dared to cross them over into America's borders. He does not represent the entire beast, let's be clear. For both vertically and horizontally, he still has opposition from the liberators or the liberals. Donald Trump has gained empowerment of the presidency and has boldly abused his power as if he were a king. Thus he is called in Isaiah 10, the high-looking king of Assyria, whose boast is, quote, "By the strength of my hand I have found as a nest the riches of the people. And there was none that moved the wing or opened the mouth or peep." Isaiah chapter 10, verses 13 and 14. What do we find in the nest but eggs, or the children? The correlative metaphor indicates the extraction of children from their parents. Of him the Lord says, "I will punish the fruit of the stout heart of the king of Assyria and the glory of his high looks." Isaiah chapter 10, verse 12. Remember, Revelation 13 shows 5 personalities. There is to be one more after 666. The 5th personality is the man of wisdom. Evidently, he, a singular man also, he blossoms from the other horn, the liberators of the lamb-like beast. As already shown from Psalms 110, cited above, and as reaffirmed by a scripture that we do not cite herein, Matthew 22, he leaves Zion with the rod in his hand that he may rule, not in heaven, but in the midst of his enemies. We know the connection between the 2 verses of Revelation chapter 13 and Psalms 110 by virtue of many texts, one of which is Micah 6:9. It promises that a man of wisdom shall see the Lord's name after hearing his, Christ, shepherd's rod message. Before so emerging in leadership, he is to sit at the Lord's right hand, the hand at the end of his, Christ's, glorious arm. Therefore, he emerges at the end of Jesus' Gentile ministry. For Jesus is the arm of the Lord, per Isaiah 53. It says, "Who hath believed our report, and to whom is the arm of the Lord revealed?" Isaiah chapter 53, verses 1 and 2. This lighting down of the Lord's arm obviously occurs in the day of enlightenment. Since the rod is an instrument that is held by the hand, and the hand is at the end of the arm, then for lighting or wisdom to come down to the rod, it must pass through Jesus. Of this transference, B.T. Hottup, the original purveyor of the hated rod message in Laodicea, said the following, and I quote, "The Lord declares that his voice is crying to the city, to the church he has, and that the men of wisdom shall see the name, and shall hear the rod and him who hath appointed it. Manifestly, this rod is capable of speaking and of being heard. Thus the command, hear ye the rod. So far as we know, the only rod that has ever spoken is the shepherd's rod. Either one cannot overlook, neglect, or reject the Lord's counsel in this matter. I must hear the rod and I must emphasize him who has appointed it, if I expect to have a home in his kingdom." Victor T. Hottup, Timely Greetings, Volume 1, number 27, page 7. Many, since this declaration of inspiration to Zion, the Seventh-day Adventist Church, it was declared more than 90 years ago, have heard and taught the shepherd's rod message. But not one until this message by yours truly, Derek West, the Mustard Seed Advent, has positioned himself to set the standards of kingdom entry For V.T. Houteff said that such an individual must hear two things. One, the rod message heard by many in the Seventh-day Adventist Church throughout its history. And a second aspect, they must hear Christ, or he who hath appointed it. They must tie the rod to Christ. Only he, the mustard seed, has so done. Only he, therefore, can, in wisdom, count the number of the beast. He begins by venturing back into ancient Gentile gospel pervading history. According to the encyclopedia, Constantine, after the death of his father in 306 AD, became the governor of England, the world of white Anglo-Saxons. Afterwards, he became the emperor of Rome to rule the Catholic diaspora. Her 10 horns and 7 heads, as I can allude back to the image that I showed you on the screen. In the process of his promotion, he was converted from a pagan worshiper to a Christian. Accordingly, did he rightly condemn the worship of many gods, or that which is called polytheism. This was to his credit. However, it is the 1700-year-old error in theology that requires wisdom to disassemble. Constantine innocently blasphemed God. He canonized into Christian doctrine the theme of triunity, which means that one God is divided into 3 personalities. His teachings made Father to appear to be psychotic, one who suffers under multiple personalities, that which we now call dissociative identity disorder. But worse than that, Catholicism vaunted his progeny, the Pope, to be over that very Trinity by advancing the claim of empowerment by the Pope to absolve sins. In this excess, our power to count is required, for he gave to us our keystone number, 1/3, or 1/3. One man over a triune God. Remember, counting does not just require whole numbers. You can add fractions as well. His blasphemy could be winked at yesterday, for as Jesus said, applicable to that day and to even to our day, no man knoweth the Son but the Father. Neither knoweth any man the Father save the Son, and he to whomsoever the Son will reveal him. Matthew chapter 11, verse 27. I say a sin winked at for because of the perversity of the immature human heart. Only milk could be consumed. And this is one of the very reasons why Father purposefully hid his identity in Jesus. Such was indeed the very expression of Christ's closing prayer. He, speaking not of himself, but of his arm, Jesus said, Father, the hour is coming. Glorify thy Son, that thy Son also may glorify thee. And now, O Father, glorify thou me with thine own self. John chapter 17, 1-5. Christ's hidden identity in Jesus all these 2,000 years meant that we were purposed to identify him not as the Pope, but as the Holy Father, until the one rod-toting wise man was to come and properly count. After all, it was the mission of the Son of David, and none other, to declare the identity, also known as the name of Christ. This Constantinian milkology of theology was to prevail until the day of the church's test. For we were commanded, quote, labor, and that's a very important word, means to work, means to put forth arduous effort. Labor not for the meat which perisheth, But for that meat which endureth unto everlasting life, which the Son of Man shall give unto you. For him hath God the Father sealed. No man can come to me except the Father which has sent me draw him, and I will raise him up at the last day. It is written in the prophets, and they shall all be taught of God. John chapter 6, verse 27, verses 44 through 45. Commandment to the church. Seek after the sealed Son. Manifestly, therefore, it must be absolutely certified. The advent of the mark of the beast must correspond with the debut of the opposite, God's seal. The mark seeks to blasphemously fractionalize God and do so under the authority of one man, 1/3, and 666, spurred on secretly and behind the scenes at first by the evangelical community, the Jesuits and the Masons, seek to reaffirm that doctrine, making 666's work to be the second installation of the 1/3 heresy. So let us count together. 1/3 plus 1/3 equals 2/3. And you know from your 4th grade math, 2/3 is the same as 666. The wisdom of this ministry shows the victory of a wise man who can count. And the first fruits of his sealing message is soon to be afforded to a special people, the 144,000. This shall be done at God's hand to yield world salvation. I count correctly by proving that Christ is God. This he is by special analysis, by the conveyance of that honor through God's ordination of power of attorney. Such validates the guilt-free worship of Jesus and Christ as if they were very God. The Bible affirms this sanctity. It says, quote, "The Father judges no man, but hath committed all judgment unto the Son, that all men should honor." Should what? That all men should honor the Son, even as they honor the Father. He that honoreth not the Son, honoreth not the Father which hath sent him. John chapter 5, verse 22 through 23. Failure to heed this wisdom has unwittingly cowered Zion, the Seventh-day Adventist Church, giving her great distress as they ignore shepherd's rod counsel in preference to accepted Catholic canon about God. Such has caused them to quiver under the threats of the beast, and they plot to flee into the seclusion of the deep country forest so as to escape his murderous design. This is a manifestation of their ill ease in the world today, as they realize death is assigned to men who receive the mark in the hand and in the forehead. The 4th seal of Revelation 6 shows by symbolism that the Roman Empire signifies death and hell. It says, and I quote, "And when he had opened the 4th seal, I looked, and behold, a pale horse. And his name that sat on him was Death. And hell followed with him. And power was given unto them to kill with the sword, and with hunger, and with death, and with the beasts of the earth." Revelation chapter 6, verses 7 and 8. Delving more into the 7 seals would be an oversaturation for this study. The book 7 Trumpet Luminescence, available upon request, covers this 4th seal thoroughly. For this sitting, the most ominous depiction of this prophecy is found in the beast's projected power to kill men who do not receive his mark. And such power was the historic mission of the pale horse rider of Catholicism. Although not understood, no, not even by mustard seed Adventist adherents until this very study, the dark purveyance of murder has become the historic nightmare of Christianity. His power must be correctly explained. To do so, we revert back to the 5 personalities depicted above. Remember, the seal of God counteracts hell's mission of death. It wins everlasting life. Thus, once unfurled, it guarantees divine protection. Protection from the pale horse rider. To receive that seal, you must believe it. To doubt is to exalt hell above God. Such is the ultimate blasphemy. Thus, Father promised the following of that sealing man. And I quote in part again, quote, labor for that meat which endureth unto everlasting life, which the Son of Man shall give unto you. For him hath God the Father sealed. And I will raise him up at the last day, and they shall all be taught of God. He that believeth on me hath everlasting life. In John chapter 6, verse 40, 45, and 47. Therefore, correct Christian canon saves life. Let's define canon. It's an accepted principle or rule by church council, according to Merriam-Webster. I say correct Christian canon saves life, and we are commanded to labor for it. It is to labor for that which Paul mandated, to labor for rest in David. To refuse is to fall after the same manner of Israel's unbelief. Speaking of the image beast, we are given insight into the actual threat of the beast's imposition of death. This is an aspect that requires our focus because it was heretofore not explained in former studies. It says of this image beast, quote, and deceiveth them that dwell on the earth by the means of those miracles which he had power to do in the sight of the beast, saying to them that dwell on the earth that they should make an image to the beast. And he had power to give life unto the image of the beast, that the image of the beast should both speak and cause that as many as would not worship the image of the beast should be killed. And he causeth all to receive a mark in their right hand or in their foreheads, and that no man might buy or sell save he that hath the mark, or the name of the beast, or the number of his name. Revelation chapter 13, verses 14 through 17. Panic in this prophecy is precociously premature. The entire threat justifiably would be terrifying if it did not have a scriptural modifier and ignored delimiter that is contained in its very own context. Immediately before the above verse of terror, it says, and I quote, if any man have an ear, let him hear. He that leadeth into captivity shall go into captivity. He that killeth with the sword must be killed with the sword. Here's the patience and the faith of the saints. Revelation chapter 13, verses 9 through 10. This verse mandates the requisite of our faith and patience, and does so to counter the murderous plot of the image beast to kill. Yesterday, his double did her crimes. And today, the image beast, her reincarnation, is to do her time, her punishment. This is what I hear by my ear. For today is the day when God does not wink at the historic excesses of Catholicism. How then dare any minister pray to God for protection while ignoring his pre-stipulations for faith? Those classed among men of faith have no reason to fear the beast, since he himself is scheduled to be killed. Ergo, the man of wisdom and his findings give modification to the power of the image of the beast. I say, yesterday, being devoid of the man who hath the ear to hear, defined more meticulously in Isaiah 50, we taught presumptuously. We thought that the arrest of Pope Pius VI by General Berthier in 1798 fulfilled this promise of the beast going into captivity. Not so. Now we know that Pope Pompous Pius 666 must be arrested. Adventists were premature in their doctrinal assumptions. Yesterday, the saints did not have that which the context absolutely and unequivocally demands of us. The man who has the ear to hear. More of him is found in Isaiah chapter 50. And the Lord expects us to know of his identity by making reference to it in the very context of Revelation 13. Again, Isaiah 50 says, and I quote, "The Lord God hath given me the tongue of the learned, that I should know how to speak a word in season to him that is weary. He wakeneth morning by morning, he wakeneth mine ear to hear as the learned." Isaiah chapter 50, verse 4. Today, we needn't be weary of the beast's murderous intentions. There is to be rest for the weary. Of this, Isaiah 10, another text, further elaborates in coded prophecy. He says, and I quote, "The Lord will punish the king of Assyria and the glory of his high looks. Therefore shall the Lord send among his fat ones leanness, and under his glory shall he kindle a burning like the burning of a fire. And the light of Israel shall be for a fire, and his Holy One for a flame, and it shall burn and devour his thorns and his briars in one day, and shall consume the glory of his forest, and of the fruitful field, both soul and body. And they shall be as when a standard bearer fainteth." Isaiah chapter 10, reading verse 12 and 16 through 18. Let's think about this now. What good would the arrest of the one Pope Pius be without the arrest of his high-looking reincarnation? So we must no longer be intimidated by the phrase, "He hath power to give life unto the image of the beast, that the image of the beast should kill." The pronouncement does not say that his zeal will not be arrested. It shall be arrested in the day when his troops storm our capital to install the regeneration of false piety. This according to Isaiah 59, for it says, and I quote, "So shall they fear the name of the Lord from the west, and his glory from the rising of the sun. When the enemy shall come in like a flood, the Spirit of the Lord shall lift up a standard against him." Isaiah chapter 59, verse 19. Who is this enemy that storms Congress, the house of the people? Could it be any other than the Confederate flag wavers of historic pedophilia, who, all these years, sought to establish white supremacy against the defiance of their opposing horn power, the liberators? Their false papal piety, hidden behind their anti-abortion cry, they cannot hide their dark work from the Lord's uplifted standard. The Bible speaks more of this arrest. It says, quote, "And the beast was taken, and with him the false prophet, that wrought miracles before him, with which he deceived them that had received the mark of the beast, and them that worshipped his image. These both were cast alive into a lake of fire, burning with brimstone." Revelation chapter 19, verse 20. So we see the proper arrest. But a future exegesis is required to give deeper analysis of the prophecy that the beast shall be cast into the lake of fire. Until more is revealed, we can at least recline in the resolve that it is an expression which is also, as is all of Revelation, couched in symbolism. The important emphasis here and now is to understand the time synergy and harmony between the mark and the seal. They both are contemporaneous. In divine foreknowledge, God has coincided the release of doctrine for our consumption. It is called the seal, that which cancels the naturally erupting heart palpitations from the study of 666. Such is the fruition of God's command. Quote, "My peace give I unto you, not as the world giveth give I unto you. Let not your heart be troubled, neither let it be afraid." In John chapter 14, verse 26 and 27. Thus, whatever scheme that the beast may conjure, disciples are commanded to be at peace. For this reason, the depth of Sabbath rest is now broadcast after being concealed from our eyes all these years. But none seem to yearn for this rest to the weary. Look around to witness Seventh-day Adventist hysteria caged in the fear of anticipated Sunday worship law. Their name for the image of the beast activity. So you can see why the seal of God must be our point of doctrine. And you can see why the Son of Man is Lord also of the Sabbath. And to proceed in that passion, we remember the seal of protection pronounced in Revelation 7, which says, and I quote, "And I saw another angel, and he cried, saying, Hurt not the earth, neither the sea, nor the trees, till we have sealed the 144,000. Revelation chapter 7, verses 1 through 4. Here we go. Until this sealing 144,000 is completed, there will be no hurt. Neither from God nor from the mark of the beast. Shadowed in this light, the faithful are cheered in the reading the closing verses of Revelation 13. It says, quote, "Here is wisdom, let him that hath understanding count." Our peace comes with the very next verse found in chapter 14. It speaks of the completed work for the 144,000. It speaks of our completed and evangelical victory. It says, and I quote, "And I looked, and lo, a Lamb stood on the Mount Zion, and with him 144,000, having his Father's name written in their foreheads." Look what they do next. "And they sung as it were a new song before the throne." Revelation chapter 14, verse 3. Amazing, they changed their song. Equally amazing, these verses are juxtaposed to express the remedy of the image beast. He does indeed have evil plans, but if you cower and quiver by his corrupt concoctions of cruelty to kill, then quickly cancel your current cantata. Consider a cultivated creed to correct your quasi-convoluted cognitions and quash Constantine's Catholic canon. Chuck their caucus colloquium of carnal concepts and concede the cry of this clarion chronicle that counters clandestine conspiracies by convoking and conveying concrete conclusions of Christ's clutch, command, and control. Then, like the 144,000, you will sing a new song. You will be taught of God and receive the Lamb's Father's identity, his name in your forehead. This is your seal. It is to walk after the Spirit and not after the flesh. For as Paul so stated, quote, "that the righteousness of the law might be fulfilled in us who walk not after the flesh, but after the Spirit. For they that are after the flesh do mind the things of the flesh, but they that are after the Spirit, the things of the Spirit. For to be carnally minded is death, but to be spiritually minded is life and peace. Because the carnal mind is enmity against God, for it is not subject to the law of God, neither indeed can be. Romans chapter 8, verses 4 through 7. You heard it. No need to plot your escape to the deep forest. Life and peace comes by the Sabbath, the spiritual Sabbath. God's contempt for death and hell is his objection to Sunday law enforcement, for it is the carnally minded law of death, that which seeks to kill all humanity. Which brings us back to the miracle of Damar Hamlin, his assisted defeat of death and hell. The visions of his lifeless body lying on the field, surrounded by tearful sympathizers, imploring God to help in his resuscitation, is still fresh in our minds. And today we have searched out God's lesson of love. Upon full resuscitation, 3 days later, uppermost to Damar was the question, did we win? First day theology deceived the world as did the Gardenic serpent deceive Mother Eve. It slyly taught that contrary to Christ's teachings, man does not die. He becomes a spirit. He becomes like God. Genesis says, and I quote, "And the woman said, the fruit of the tree which is in the midst of the garden, God has said, ye shall not eat of it, lest ye die. And the serpent said unto the woman, ye shall not surely die. For God doth know that in the day ye eat thereof, then your eyes shall be opened, and ye shall be as gods." Genesis chapter 3, verses 4 through 5. This lie exemplifies the full meaning of death and hell vested in the Catholic canon. It is the synopsis of Sunday law which she installed. Damar defeated that lie, for if he had become like God in death, he would have known by the abiding presence of his supposed disembodied ghost that the game was postponed, that there was no winner. His experience validated Christ to the universe. Equally important, it exposed the sting of the first day curse vested in the sophistry of hell. This it did for a global audience, and it did so without advancing abstract theological dissertations. Many in their distress have been taught to pray to their dead relatives. But with Damar, he sought his answer among the living. Our ancestors died with unanswered questions too. Now confidence can abound when by their resuscitation, we can explain how they too have won the game of life. This is the day that we enter into our Sabbath rest. Sunday, the day of the anemic and pale horse, was the very worst day of human history. It was for earth, but for Satan, it is the greatest day in the universe, the day that he defeated Christ by destroying humanity, Christ's very handiwork. I want Christ to win. What about you? I want to enter into his victory rest. To worship God on Sunday is to participate in Satan's inglorious celebration of Adam's death. A Halloween party for all carnally minded men who walk after the flesh. Why should we be Satan's witches, vampires, zombies? By celebrating his mark in our foreheads, his success in man's demise. Father ordained a day of our victory from death. And should not the wise walk after the Spirit and seek Sabbath worship in that promised day? Even though it comes after a 6,000-year work week? Be not confused. The church has had a literal weekly Saturday Sabbath of praise for our creation. I say literally, but it always had a deeper ethereal message. a walk after the Spirit. For of it Christ did say, and I quote, "Come unto me, all ye that labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn of me, for I am meek and lowly in heart, and ye shall find rest unto your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light." Matthew chapter 11, verses 28 and 29. But your confusion can readily be perceived. If his yoke is easy, then why have his disciples suffered historically in death? Our gross hearts are laden with this pessimism, requiring wisdom to explain. Instead of celebration, Zion, the Lord's church, continues to project great distress and persecution from 666. It is because, as Paul stated, and I shall recite again, none until this hour have labored to enter into that rest. The rest that, according to Paul and according to Christ, still remains. The rest that is to come in David after so long a time. When Paul said, and I quote, "For he spake in a certain place of the seventh day on this wise, and God did rest the seventh day from all his work. And in this place again, if they shall enter into my rest. Seeing therefore it remaineth that some must enter therein, and they to whom it was first preached enter not in because of unbelief." Again, he limited a certain day, saying, "In David." Today, after so long a time, as it is said, "Today, if ye will hear his voice, harden not your hearts." For if Jesus had given them rest, then would he not afterward have spoken of another day? There remaineth therefore a rest to the people of God. For he that is entered into his rest, he also has ceased from his own work as God did from his. Let us labor therefore to enter into that rest, lest any man fall after the same example of unbelief. Hebrews chapter 4, verses 4 through 11. As shown in our last study, the term rest, spoken of both by Christ and Paul, is a metaphor or a double entendre. It uses the legally mandated and very literal seventh-day Sabbath rest to define an even more illustrious glory. Damar's resuscitation, the day when our work week is seen as yesterday. Let it globally resonate. The abstract meaning of this rest is the true seal of God, the Sabbath seal. Conversely, Sunday worship celebrates our eternal demise, the anxiety that Damar would never physically rise again. Proof of this 1,000-year abstraction is found in the very articulation of Adam's curse. "And the Lord God commanded the man, saying, Of every tree of the garden thou mayest freely eat. But of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil thou shalt not eat of it. For in the day that thou eatest thereof, thou shalt surely die." Genesis chapter 2, verses 16 and 17. Adam violated this commandment, and his death came exactly as promised. This we most assuredly can know because Adam died not in the very literal day, but 930 years afterwards, meeting the ethereal definition of the prophetic day. If he would have lived until 1000, then his death would have made God a liar, for it would have occurred in the second day. Now we can be made free, for Paul said, "For the law of the Spirit of life in Christ Jesus have made me free from the law of sin and death." Romans chapter 8, verses 1 and 2. And be ye not confused by the literal 6-day work week. Earth, the place of Christ's original rest, was completed in that time span. And man was then created as an eternal being. But the promise of David that, quote, "1,000 years in thy sight are but as yesterday when it is past," in Psalms chapter 90, verse 4, affirms a concealed double meaning, one that expresses our work week to be a day for 1,000 years. That is the day that when it expires, it will be to us and to God as yesterday, as history. Then the righteous can come to Christ and find rest from the excesses of 666, from their fears of his zeal to kill the true Sabbath keepers. You are prudent to bask in Solomon's wisdom. He says, and I quote, "It is the glory of God to conceal a thing, but the honor of kings is to search out a matter." Proverbs 25, verse 2. Will you honor the Son today, the day when the wicked shall cease their troubling, and the weary shall be at rest, when all the saints of the ages shall sit at his feet and be blessed? Can more be said? Freedom in our rest is, again, our Sabbath seal. The unfortunate truth is that all in Zion have heart palpitations and a paranoia about the mark of the beast, that which they call Sunday law enforcement. Christ speaking not to the entire Christian world, but only to the Seventh-day Adventist Church. His first Sabbatarian battalion foretold of their demise because they have rejected his voice of advancing wisdom, the shepherd's rod message. He will consequently secure their entrapment and their very fears. He said, and I quote, "I also will choose their delusions and will bring their fears upon them. Because when I called, none did answer. When I spake, they did not hear." Isaiah 66, verse 4. Their final call came in 2014 through the Mustard Seed Advent Ministry, which was the extension of the rod message, that which connected the rod to the identity, the name of the Lord, to Christ. It was sent to all of their leaders, a thing that V.T. Houteff in 1955 could not do. Yet it was universally rejected. Thus they are entangled in the pale horse rider zeal of death and hell, the law of sin and death. They so hated the promises of kingdom rest in David that they have unwittingly become ardent antagonists to the Sabbath seal, yielding their voluntary submission to Sunday law. Though they have received it by camouflage, nonetheless to heaven and hell, it still stains their foreheads. They all have been ensnared according to Isaiah chapter 8. They have all been taken. In April 2010, the book Confederacy Trap was released by this ministry. It defined therein the mark as the inundation of the church under Assyria's sewer water. The name Assyria is God's concealed code word to prefigure America, the two-horned beast. By virtue that the seal is only now at hand, we can explain the full severity of the Adventist self-set trap. It says, and I quote, "Now therefore, behold, the Lord bringeth up upon them the waters of the river, strong and many, even the king of Assyria, and all his glory. And he shall come up over all his channels and go over all his banks. And he shall pass through Judah, and he shall overflow and go over, and he shall reach even to the neck. And the stretching out of his wings shall fill the breadth of thy land, O Emmanuel." Isaiah chapter 8, verses 7 and 8. The entire country, the land of Emmanuel, is under siege. But our focus is on Zion, the Seventh-day Adventist Church. Their ranks replete with Jesuits and Masons, spies pretending to be men of piety, having become scoffers, have thwarted the work of the shepherd's rod message. Again, in speaking of the shepherd's rod message, I refer to the Adventist duty to hear both the shepherd, who is Christ, and V.T. Houteff, the author of the rod. But time is up, and the spies have schemed away Adventist opportunity for atonement. As a matter of doctrinal inversion, therefore, the message from the house of David must make a world appeal and heed its commission to globally say ye not a confederacy to all. Commensurately today, January 2023, more meat from yesterday's wheat flour is revealed. By meat, I refer to that which Christ commanded that we labor so as to win the seal of God. The January 6, 2021 invasion of Congress signified the beginning of this drama. E.G. White, in quoting Isaiah 8, gave the following warning to benefit the globe. And I quote, "The Lord declares through the prophet Isaiah," and now she's quoting Isaiah chapter 8, "Associate yourselves, O ye people, and ye shall be broken in pieces. Give ear, all ye of far countries, guard yourself, and ye shall be broken in pieces. Take counsel together, and it shall come to naught. Speak the word, and it shall not stand, for God is with us. For the Lord spake thus to me with a strong hand, and instructed me that I should not walk in the way of this people, saying, say ye not a confederacy. To all them to whom this people shall say a confederacy, neither fear ye their fear, nor be afraid. Sanctify the Lord of hosts himself, and let him be your fear, and let him be your dread." Then E.G. White gives her commentary. She says, "There are those who question whether it is right for Christians to belong to the Freemasons and other secret societies. Let all such consider the scriptures just quoted. If we are Christians at all, we must be Christians everywhere, and must consider and heed the counsel given to make us Christians according to the standard of God's word. When we accept Christ as our Redeemer," that's a key phrase, has much more meaning, and now a key phrase which has much more meaning to us today. When we accepted Christ as our Redeemer, we accepted the condition of becoming laborers together with God. Ellen G. White, Evangelism, page 618. Here we see that the accepting of Christ is our key to the seal. And those who trust the Bible over Constantine know that he, Christ, at the express will of Father, said, quote, "No man knoweth the Son but the Father, and he to whomsoever the Son will reveal him." Matthew chapter 11, verse 27. Obviously, the mystery-searching king has met his duty. Such yields our victory over the flood of Satan's spies that have inundated Emmanuel's land, the land of the lamb-like beast. Only in this shall the image beast, corrupt concoctions of cruelty to kill, be defeated. The Assyrian Confederacy is also rooted in Adventism today, and Isaiah also foretold of its tentacles. In chapter 7, he cited ancient Hebrew history as the basis of our analogy. In 760 BC, the house that ruled Judah, which was the house of David, was hated by other nations. One was Rezin, king of Syria, not to be confused with the nation of Assyria. The other was Remaliah's son, who ruled Ephraim. Without making it too complicated, Ephraim comprised of Jacob's other sons, called 10-tribe Israel also. The hidden message herein for Zion has been searched out by the Mustard Seed Advent. It shows the antitypical struggle within the Seventh-day Adventist diaspora and their secret society confederations. Today, for Syria, the so-called white churches, it consists of many other nationalities. It is only so-called because she is segregated from the black churches, the other half of the Confederacy. The white churches so conspired clandestinely with the black churches to surreptitiously destroy the house of David, also known as Davidia, or the shepherd's rod movement, which Isaiah prefigures as the house of Judah. The book Confederacy Trap gives nearly 240 pages to express the intricacies of this prophecy. For our purposes today, Isaiah 7 gives the following coded message. Then said the Lord unto Isaiah, say unto Ahaz, king of Judah, take heed and be quiet. Fear not, neither be faint-hearted, because Syria and Ephraim have taken evil counsel against thee, saying, let us go up against Judah, which is the house of David, and vex it. Thus saith the Lord God, it shall not stand, neither shall it come to pass. The Lord spake also to me again, saying, for as much as this people refuseth the waters of Shiloh that goeth softly, and rejoiceth in Rezin and Remaliah's son, now therefore behold, the Lord bringeth upon them the waters of the river, strong and many, even the king of Assyria, in all his glory, and he shall come up over all his channels, and go over all his banks, meaning he shall violate all his constitutional self-limitations. And he shall pass through Judah, and he shall overflow and go over. He shall reach even to the neck, and the stretching out of his wings shall fill the breadth of thy land, O Emmanuel. Isaiah chapter 7, verses 3 through 7, chapter 8, verses 5 through 8. In a nutshell, Adventists have refused the wisdom of the end-time ordained King Shiloh, he who has now blossomed with their seal, the ultimate descendant of the ancient patriarch Judah, a Jew from the line of David. He emerges today hidden in America's manger after hundreds of generations. You see the fountain, his water goes softly, meaning he opens the prophecies to show our peace, our rest, our reason not to fear Sunday law. The nominal Adventist brethren, having rejected this message, are not at peace as commanded. Instead, they are vexed by the papacy's vain clandestine confederations. They even feel compelled to flee to the isolation of the forest in self-exile that they may escape the murderous machinations of the image beast. They fear Assyria overflowing her self-imposed limitations on government and imposing the Sunday law of worship on the world. This they somewhat correctly call the mark of the beast. But what is Sunday law worship? It is the rejection of the correct Sabbath. The promised rest is in David. Ergo, their fear has already been brought upon them. How so? How is it that they are brought under God's impending penalty of death? They have refused to learn of Christ and do as E.G. White recommended and become laborers together with God. Fear is the enemy of faith. Thus, they've resisted the Son of David, whose waters, as stated previously, go softly. He tells them how the image beast schemes need to inspire their fear because God shall cause his defeat. But refusing his doctrine of rest, as it is in David, they are oblivious to the fact that the mark of the beast is already impressed into their foreheads. How long will it be that David will still be able to wash away that stain? I cannot now say, but I can say that the imposition of a literal law that demands Sunday worship ought not to trouble their hearts, since the Lord told Isaiah, quote, say ye not a confederacy, to all them to whom this people shall say a confederacy, neither fear ye their fear, nor be afraid. Sanctify the Lord of hosts himself, and let him be your fear. Let him be your dread. And he shall be for a sanctuary, but for a stone of stumbling, and for a rock of offense to both the houses of Israel, for a gin and for a snare to the inhabitants of Jerusalem. And many among them shall stumble and fall, and be broken, and be snared, and be taken. Isaiah chapter 8, verses 12 through 15. The image beast's scheme to kill all who refuse his Halloween Sabbath will be brought to naught by Emmanuel. For if Christ is our sanctuary, we need not pray for a flight to the country or to heaven so as to escape the pale horse rider of death and hell. Instead, we can heed Paul's counsel and make it our determination to preclude our fall after the same example of Israel's unbelief and find rest in this very place again. After all, what difference does it make if you run to the hills so as to keep the seventh-day Sabbath holy if you refuse the remedy to reverse the day of Adam's Sunday law, the day of his fall? In so doing, you are a de facto Sunday worshiper. On another closing note, Isaiah 8 speaks of the hatred of Shiloh's water. His doctrine, ancient Jacob can contribute more meaning. At his death, he prophesied of Shiloh. He said, Shiloh shall strap his coal unto the vine. And since Christ is the vine, then we can have affirming comfort in H.G. White's promise that when we accepted Christ as our Redeemer, we accepted the condition of become laborers together with God. Is not such the meaning of Emmanuel, God with us? Having so done, we can evangelize the world right in the face of Satan and all his agents, along with his phony marks. For Jacob further promised, and I quote, the scepter shall not depart from Judah, nor a lawgiver from between his feet, until Shiloh come, and unto him shall the gathering of the people be, binding his foal unto the vine, and his ass's colt unto the choice vine. He washed his garments in wine, and his clothes in the blood of grapes. Genesis chapter 49, verses 10 and 11. Who else could be his ass's colt other than the work of Vitiata, he whom Christ inspired? Today as never before, it too must be bound to Christ. We must hear the rod and he who hath appointed it. Christ is the choice vine in the day when his name is revealed. What really offends heaven is not Sunday, but the honor of Satan, because it was the day of his victory over the earth. It began the first of our 6,000-year count. Such is hatred for the rest for the weary. I know Adventist leaders will retort in reference to this light that it should be rejected because Satan is promised to appear in the last days as an angel of light. When this claim they do make, ask them one simple question. How do we know that you are not Satan's phony light, disguised as an angel? Derek has bound his foal and his ass's coat unto the choice vine. You have bound yours to Constantine, the pale horse of death and hell. To reject the kingdom rest to occur is to resist the Lord's command to the Son of David when he is commanded to, sit thou at my right hand until I make thine enemies thy footstool. The Lord shall send the rod of thy strength out of Zion. Rule thou in the midst of thine enemies. Psalms 110, verses 1 and 2. This shall be our victory. Thus, at the risk of oversaturation, you have my closing words pertaining to this second part of 666 and the mark of the beast. And with that, I bring the study to a close.